Greetings, everyone. Welcome to our session today with Kasun. We are glad to be here on Azure Spring Clean 2025. Thank you for organizers, especially for the viewers who are part of this awesome event. Our session today is going to be focused on managed Kubernetes in Azure environment and as well as the tools that you need to know about. As you know, there was evolution in that tooling. And Kasuna also going to emphasize certain things that he learned while implementing that. And I hope he can bring some stories, maybe, from implementation and some challenges that he went through. But we're going to emphasize toward how you can get started with that, but not that only, right? So we want to make sure that when you go into that, you also have some scripted way to provision that. And we are going to share the repo where you can get the code and provision that on yourself. We'll go through high level explaining that to you, and as well as how it should look like once you provision that. So I hope you are energized and ready for this. Thank you for again joining. So let's get this started. Okay, before we get this started, let's learn about Kasun. Hey Kasun, so what you are doing in community, who you are, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you for thank you everyone. So yes, I'm Kasun Rajapaksa. So I work as a DevOps engineer in Netherlands. So I'm a Microsoft MVP as well in cloud native category and a Docker captain as well. So I am I do a lot of community contribution through YouTube videos, then the sessions like this, and GitHub and other various methods. So yeah, that's about me. So Alekhan, let's introduce you as well.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so if you are looking for some Docker captain, he's here. So he's a bit shy
Yeah,
about that, but he's our Docker captain. So feel free to reach out to him. So my name is Elhan. Maybe you know me. I'm the Cloud Marathoner community leader, and I always try to organize people to, to tweet about that, to share their learning as Cloud Marathoner. It's all about learning in the cloud. I'm director at the company called T-Rex Solutions. It's doing mostly mission critical system for our customers who are in the cloud environment. I'm also Azure MVP on Microsoft Azure category, sharing my blogs, and as well as we are moderating and bringing new speakers on different uh, different events like the one that we organize in Cloud Lunch and Learn. Maybe you are familiar there. So I'm also co-organizer there, and as well as I'm a Microsoft Community MCT community lead for Microsoft Certified Trainers. So if you are MCT, you have any question, you have any suggestion about the MCT program itself, feel free to reach back to me. You can reach back to me on MCT launch, where if there's something that program related, I'll take your feedback and I will make sure that the MCT program, help you in that and plus improve the program. All right, without any overdue, let's go to the agenda here and we'll kickstart with Kasun here. So Kasun, what we are going to share today with our viewers?
yeah. Today we are going to talk about what is observability and what are the key concepts around cloud native observability and how Azure services, what Azure services we can use to use for observability, and especially we are taking look at how Azure Kubernetes Service manage Kubernetes uh, uh, will use Azure services for observability and monitoring the applications. And at the end, we will take a look at best practices, and we have few demos as well to show you.
Great. So I hope you are all, up to that. So we'll have not just one demo, but two demos there.
Yeah,
And, we want to make sure that you get maximum out of this session. So if you have any questions while you are watching this on YouTube channel, where it's probably going to end up, so please put the things there in the comments, reach out to us. We are here to hear back from you, your feedback, and make this even better. All right, so let's kick this with the first part, what's observability. If you have been doing, some cloud administration and maybe DevOps or DevSecOps type of work, it could be also SRE, you are probably very familiar with this concept. So when we talk about observability, it is much more deeper and beyond regular monitoring. With observability, you want to capture the holistically the whole system in terms of what's happening, what's causing uh, certain issues, or find out about the performance issues, or if your performance is going and meeting your baseline output. So when we talk about that, to achieve this, okay, it's all about this gathering the logs, metrics, and traces of your workloads for internal state of the system where you are providing these services to your customers. So this deeper insights into what's happening in your application, they require additional services that Microsoft Azure provides. We are going to talk more about that, so I'm not going to give the name of those. So we are going to look at each of these services that are part of this demo as well. And when we talk about these specific things, right, the metrics, logs, and traces, of course, there's metrics and logs. So logs might be more familiar to you because logs have been there for a long time, and it's more of a text-based records that you get as part of this observability. And then you have metrics. Metrics are more in tune in a way that you can actually, create the graphs. It's a numeric number that you are capturing. So that's why you can have certain reports on usage, on average, and stuff like that. So it's not just text log, but this, I would say, vectorized. It's a number that you are capturing. It can be CPU usage, it can be, memory consumption, it can be available free disk space, on the system, or any storage space that you want to have close monitoring there. And then, of course, you have traces, and traces are just distributed request checking across multiple services that you want to have this holistic view into. Is there anything else, maybe in observability, Kasun, you would like to add?
Um, no, basically these three are the main concepts related to observability.
Mm-hmm,
So if you add additional to traces, so traces means in microservice applications, the application will not application will communicate with multiple services, right?
mm-hmm,
So from these traces, we can identify how the specific request is travel.
fulfilled.
Yeah, how the request is performed to different services. How the request is talk to different services for their uh, application. So if something goes wrong, we can identify from this application to this application we have good connection or good communication,
Mm-hmm,
and from there we can get different metrics related to the how much time it takes to load the to take the request from one service to another service.
yes.
Likewise, we can uh, get a lot of information from there.
Great. Yeah. So speaking of that, of course, with observability, as we are talking about managed services, it makes sense to look at some key concepts of cloud native observability, what it is, and what we need to focus on. So let's look at those key concepts and that you need to know about in cloud native services. So go ahead, Kasum, please.
Yeah, so in most of the cloud native applications are designed with microservice architecture. So when you have a microservice architecture, monitoring is not easy and debugging is not easy because the system is more complex. It has sometimes have hundreds or thousands of services within one single application. So if something goes wrong, so identifying the specific root cause around these hundreds of thousands of services will not easy, right? So therefore, we can use observability to resolve that kind of complexities, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and it requires because Microsoft architecture is scale very scalable solution. So if you want to track the health and performance of each components, then you should have uh, good cloud native observability in place to get the information about each and individual services performance and how those each components behavior and health of this each component. Then scalability and elasticity also very important, because if you are selecting a cloud observability platform, then this app observability solution must be able to adapt for the services scales up and down, because sometimes um, the specific application can scale to multiple instances. So then those instances will uh, ingest a lot of data into your observability solution. Then the observability solution should be able to handle that amount of data, and the observability solution should be able to scale based on that.
Yes.
Then the real-time monitoring also important, because um, if it is a mission critical application, then you should know real time, you should know something goes wrong. You should immediately should identify and notify what went wrong. So the immediate feedback and the performance issues are very important for a team to proactively troubleshoot in the issues happening in the system or the applications. Yeah.
Yes, great. And for real-time monitoring, like for solutions that you offer to your customers, there's a heartbeat basically. It's a heartbeat that you want to make sure heartbeat of the workloads can be virtual machines, any type of services there. It's always monitored, and if there's an issue, it's alerted. So part of this real-time monitoring is alerting system, right? That's coming behind that. So in terms of alerting system, which type of alerting you have used or your customers have been using to get this real-time monitoring feedback for critical? Well, no, if system goes down, right, and you want
Yeah.
to get alert. So did you use the Azure Monitor alerting, or there was something else that you also incorporated? Just asking from viewers' perspective.
Yeah, it depends actually. So if you can integrate with Azure Alerts as well. So in the demo, I will show you how we can integrate Azure Alerts with uh, so our
Observability solution.
observability solution, right? So there are multiple ways. So it depends on how your observability platform is configured, right?
Hmm.
So if you are using managed services from Azure, then there are seamless integration to Azure
Yeah.
alerting system. Then if you are using your uh, self-hosted setup,
Hmm.
then they also have different integrations you can do to send alerts to Azure or other monitoring, other notification systems, right?
Yes.
So it is
Great.
depending on the ecosystem. Yeah.
Yes, and I will just add into that that when you are setting this alert and monitoring system, part of the good practice is to make sure that it's not just dependent on Azure monitoring solution. And what I mean by that is, let's say there are a number of external public websites or sites that you are, providing services to your customer in terms of operating them. And if any of those websites are down, you should not just rely on Azure to tell you that. One of the good practices is to set up these external monitoring services, and there are a number of them, which will monitor your website based on monitoring criteria and endpoints you put there. And if there's any issue, there are different capabilities, right? You can get the text, you can get the call. It really depends how sophisticated you want to have this alerting uh, capabilities to be set it up. But on the main point here, I want to point is that you should not just rely on one system to monitor. If it's a mission critical, you need to look at some other ways, external services maybe, to provide that monitoring in a way that if one of the monitoring services is down for a number of reasons, then you still can rely on secondary service to do this monitoring. Okay, great. So that's it. Now let's look at specific services, right? So we didn't mention any service names. In this case, in this demo, because we are going to rely on mostly on Microsoft Azure services, so we are going to emphasize on those services, and you would see them in the demo. So first of all is Azure Monitor, right? So Azure Monitor it's a managed service. It has been there for, I would say, for years and years, and it get through evolution. That's the big part. So if you were into Azure Monitoring Service way back, you would see that there is much more insights collected at the moment, and there was certain services that get deprecated, and new services came to replace them because overall need and I would demand for monitoring over time, especially with this cloud native approach, changed a lot. And when we speak about Azure Monitor, so what it does, it's not just one service, it's a suite of services that's I would say gathered under the umbrella of Azure Monitoring Service that basically provide you monitoring capabilities in your infrastructure and as well as applications. So it's not just Azure platform, but also the applications that are running in that platform. And what it does is basically it has many connectors. It has many ways to collect the data, not just from your Azure platform, but also external, services. For example, you can collect your metrics and traces and logs from external systems. It can be on-prem and it can be also different cloud services that you need to monitor as well. So you can have this centralized place to collect them. And once those, metrics, logs, and traces are captured, it has the capability to show you insights and give you some ready metrics that are get gathered in that. So next here, so this is more of a plot. We have another specialized service called Azure Application Insights, and Azure Application Insights is uh, it's an application performance monitoring service there for specifically designed for the applications that you run in the cloud. In order to use application insights, you need to enable that, right? So you need to enable that on your application. If it is a Azure Web App type of application, managed service that you are running, it's very easy to enable that and then start collecting the logs. But if it is a third party, then you may want to go through certain things where you need to install that instrumentation tool so that you can start using the application insights. I find this Azure Application Insights very comprehensive and robust tool because it helps not just you as infrastructure engineer or architect to see what's going on, but also very helpful for the application developers to see that if there's an error, application specific error, where it happened, what caused it. If it is a latency issue between communication between components of your application, you will see that there as well because it collects all that data. So it's very go-to, I would say, tool when you have issues in your application in production, especially, and you want to troubleshoot that as soon as possible. Next, here we have Azure Log Analytics. So Azure Log Analytics is think about that more of a place where your logs and traces, metrics are get gathered, right? So it's when we speak about Azure Log Analytics, we speak about Azure Log Analytics Workspace, right? That's the instance that you create in order to be able to collect them, and there are specific recommendations for each workload and each Azure subscription, how you want to set up for your environment. So I'm not going to spoil here, and I would say you definitely need to check that before you are setting Azure Local Analytics Workspace, because I have been in different environments where I saw, big number of Azure Log Analytics Workspaces have been created without understanding them, which actually defies the purpose. Because if you want to have a united, unified way of looking at the logs holistically within the environment, you want to make sure that the services which you are trying to serve, they are all report and their logs get gathered in the same Azure Log Analytic workspace. Otherwise, if they are in a different one, it's really not that of a big fun to get them together, because it's really hard at that point to come with unified solution, and you would have to look to different places for different things, which again will distract you from and add more time into troubleshooting when you are trying to find the issues. This is Azure Log Analytics Workspace is a centralized log management service, and it enables you to query and correlate the logs from different sources. And part of this is actually, if you are familiar with QKL, right, custom query language, it's using that one, and you can, aggregate the logs. You can look into issues based on the specific parameters that's capturing, which is great. And then we come to the, I would say cherry or cream part of it, which is going to be part of our, demo that Kasun is going to show. It's Azure Managed Prometheus and Grafana services. So for years that I would say it was there, but was not as much integrated, right? From Azure perspective, but those tools, Prometheus and Grafana, they are, I believe, they are the open source tools initially. That's how they started, and then they get the traction on DevOps, DevSecOps, and SRE communities because the value they bring there, and because it became a standard, I would say, suite of tools, especially for managing the containerized applications like Kubernetes, and then that was a push from Microsoft to bring that into Azure as a first class citizen, right? That you can rely on when you are dealing with your AKS workloads, especially managing them, visualizing the metrics and logs. So that's where the services came. Again, Grafana came with that visualization metric logs traces that you can look into dashboards that you can create. And then with Prometheus, which is Azure Managed Service, Prometheus that's running there, can collect metrics from different data sources. Again, they come with native integration into Azure Monitoring and Application Insights, so that makes them first-class citizen in Azure environment, especially for AKS when you are dealing with Azure Kubernetes Service monitoring and observability related tasks. Back to you, Kasun. Is there anything else maybe you want to add before we switch to the demo?
Yeah, so about application insight, we need we can initially on easily onboard our application to application insight, but it is sometimes will be the initial setup. But if you want to have more insights on your application, then you should do a lot of you have to do instrumentations
Mm-hmm.
based on your language. For example, if you are .NET, then if your application is developed based on .NET, then you need to add the metric collection instrumentation into your application. So then you can get more, more and more insight about your applications, request metrics and traces. Everything can be captured from there, right?
Yes.
So yeah, for manage Prometheus and Grafana. So as you mentioned, it is a open source solutions. So Prometheus is the second project in CNCF after Kubernetes. So it's one of the oldest project with CNCF. So and it has a lot of capabilities and open source, lot of good features there. So and it is the de facto monitoring solution for cloud native uh, and containerization. So that's why
Mm-hmm.
Microsoft take opportunity of that and create their own solution on top of Prometheus. Yeah, Prometheus managed services um, is very straightforward compared to the self-hosted one, because if you are using self-hosted one, then you have to think about a lot of things apart from deploying it, because you need to make you
Maintain
need to
it.
think about availability, high availability, then receive the data, how the data should be replicated. Then it can be quite
Tricky. It
complex.
can be very
Yeah,
tricky, right? So
yeah,
there's a lot of traps that you need to be
try,
aware about.
yeah,
You don't want to burn yourself. So if, especially for Prometheus running on Azure, if you have
yeah,
option to use the managed one,
yeah,
it's really makes things a lot easier
a lot
if you
easier.
never
Yeah,
if you never managed it.
yeah,
Because yeah, you can go with a self-hosted one, but there's a lot of things that you need to consider. And
consider.
if you
Yeah,
don't have the in-house skills of people who did
mm,
that, it's going to be a trap for a lot of things. So
yeah,
just be aware about that. Caution from that's the caution call from Kasun, so so don't miss that out. Yeah, thank you.
yeah,
That's really good points. Yeah. Yeah, great. So next here, as we mentioned, we will look into demo where we'll have look into what's the Azure Log Analytics and how this Azure Monitorings look like. So, Kasun, if you want, you can share the screen now.
Yeah, sure. Let me share my screen.
Mm-hmm.
And can everyone see?
Yes, I
Yeah,
see your
okay.
sharing. Yep, go ahead, please.
Yeah, sure. So first we look at what is Azure Monitor means. So Azure Monitor is, as I mentioned, it is quite it's available in Azure for a very long time, but time to time Azure Monitor will introduce additional tools, right? So in this if you go to the Azure Monitor, so you can search it in the top search, or you can get it from under the services section, right? So you will see a similar dashboard, overview dashboard. Here you can see there are the the solutions that are integrated with Azure Monitor, right? So for example, we talk about application insight, then we will talk about content insight in future, right? In the next demo. Then they also have like VM insight, then network insight. Likewise, then it also integrated with alerting and monitoring, alerting and notification services as well, right? Is included in the managed. Prometheus also part of Azure Monitor umbrella, right? So yeah, so in here you can see the right side, left side. So you can see all the inside solutions, right? So if you are using Cosmos DB, then Azure Key Vaults and other additional services, also they have different solutions to get the information, right? For example, if I go to the storage accounts, right, then you can see very good information about your available storage accounts, right? So you can see how many transactions are happening, then the latency, then the server latency, and if there are any errors from the client side as well. So then additionally, you can see the capacity related metrics, also how much of these storage accounts are used, right? Like kind of you can get a good overview about these different services that are already integrated with uh, Azure Monitor, right? This
Yes.
another example is like Key Vault, right? So here you can see how much of requests are going, what are the failure requests. Likewise, you can see get some good information, high level information about your these services, right?
Yes. And let me add something there in terms of like failure. So, for example, there was time that I was working for one of the customer applications. It's
Yeah.
basically examples from the field, and then we had this Azure Redis cache. Azure Redis cache that was there as a caching solution for the application. Application was running on Azure Web App containerized application. And here's the fun part, though, because we are talking about production application. There was a big utilization of the Azure Redis cache, and even though the application developers were not aware about that, our SRE engineer found that, hey, there is actually for a given month, there are like 600 plus million misses on the cache. Can you imagine? So it means that it put a lot of stress on the
Yeah.
application and the storage account and any other storage service that was, doing to retrieve the data, which will of course add into latency and plus cost, right? So when you talk about Azure monitoring, keep in mind that transactions themselves, depending on the pricing model which you choose, each transaction that you have against the data service, usually it has a cost. And the more transactions you have, it means you need to adjust the pricing model. Otherwise, you can get up with a big bill that your customer needs to pay. So from that perspective, when we talk about monitoring, when we talk about observability, you also need to look where your application needs to improve or maybe change the pricing plan so that you can add efficiency to your customer application in terms of hosting, the cost to the customer, and overall, satisfaction of the end users who are trying to use the application. Back to you.
Yeah, yeah. So that's a good example. So I also had some similar kind of thing because one of our clients' application, we noticed that the Cosmos DP, they have a lot of uh, t- misses happening
Misses, yeah,
because of
cache misses,
so
yeah.
so those kind of things we identified through these kind of Azure Monitor dashboards. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I know that just from the perspective of that customer, we saved them thousands and thousands of dollars by,
yeah. That's right.
identifying that on time because it was
Yeah.
very big cost. Yeah, back to you.
So yeah, the another thing that we can this very useful is web workbooks, right?
Yes.
So here you can see that there are some very there are pre-built workbooks available in Azure, right? So, but there are a lot of other workbooks available in the open source. That means developed by community. There are other workbooks as well. But as you as if you are familiar with workbooks, then you can create your own workbooks as well to visualize these information about these different services. For example, if I get already provision already available workbook in Azure like this
Mm-hmm.
multi-cluster overview in Azure, right?
Yeah.
So here you can see uh, overview about the clusters that are running, then the cluster health status, then how much of pods and system pods are running. So you can get like a good overview about your clusters that are running, right? In the
Nice.
yeah, then the cluster performance also you can see how the each of these clusters are performed, right? So you can see how the nodes CPU usage, then how the memory usage of these different nodes, right? So these informations are very informative when you are working in very large application with a lot of request and data, right?
Yes.
Likewise, you can go with through controllers, that means the pods and those kind of things as well in depth, right? So
Right.
these are very informative for anyone who work with these applications, right?
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah,
Definitely.
yeah. Then metrics also very important, right? So if you have a specific service, like for example storage account, then you can select that services from here. Uh, you can filter based on the services on top. Then, for example, if I select key vaults, then then if I select one of these key vault, right, then
Mm-hmm.
apply, then you can get the available metrics for that specific key vault. Then you can view of these availability and these specific metrics. Then you can identify if there are any anomalies happening through that services, right? Yeah. Then, so that's about the high level in Azure Monitor. So you can get a you can dive deep when you do a lot of work with these services, right?
Mm-hmm.
So then you will learn more into these different things,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
The
Great.
next, yeah, sure, go.
No, no, I will just add that the especially things that you may find helpful that Kasun showed is that insights part, right? So insights part is going to aggregate logs on the specific services,
Yeah,
which mostly used for, they are basically critical services across where once you enable the login and monitoring, you will get those insights. But again,
yeah,
you need to make sure that you enable them. Otherwise, if those logs are not collected into your Azure Log Analytic workspace, they are
yeah,
not going to be visualized here.
yeah,
Just want to
yeah.
make sure that it's part of the setup that you want to make sure it's in place. Back to
Yeah, sure. So the next we will take a look at Logantic Workspace, right? So Azure Logantic Workspace, as we previously mentioned, it is a place that you can send lot of data,
you. Hmm.
only not only logs. You can even send metrics as well, but it depends on the what uh, the scenario what you need, the solution you need, right? But if you want to send metrics, you can do it. Then if you are using traces or like application insight, also in the backend it is using Logantic Workspace, right? So you can decide how the Logantic Workspace should work. Like some organization will use Logantic Workspace for all of these components, but some organization may divide workspaces based on the scenarios, right? For example, if the workspace using for Sentinel, then it should use only that log only workspace will use only for security logs and those kind of
Right.
things, right? So
Yes, yes.
kind of it depends on the way you use.
And coming back to what Kasun mentioned, so your basic strategy there, and when you're trying to identify how you wanna architect your log analytic workspace for given customer, you wanna look at who is should be able to access the data, and based
Yeah,
on that access and security, you need to define that. But overall speaking, if you for a given Azure subscription and the services, you wanna have your for example, if you run your workloads in North Europe, right, and all of them are there, you want to have, for example, dedicated log analytic workspace for the North Europe region where you collect everything so that all the apps who are communicating there and providing service to your customers, you have this one holistic point where everything is aggregated so that you can have up to date and I would say, invaluable. It's invaluable information when you are trying to troubleshoot the issues in your environment. Back to you.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, so for example, I have one of my workspace. So here you can see there are different type of logs are integrated with this logantic workspace. So yeah, you can get all of these. Like for example, if I want to see um, activity logs, right?
Mm-hmm.
Actual activity. So then that's also possible. So that is related to the things that we do. Different people are doing to your Azure services, like updating services, then you can send those logs to the logantic workspace as well. So as well as if you are enabling diagnostic settings for different services in Azure, that diagnostics logs also can be sent it to the logantic workspace, which will be helpful for troubleshooting as well.
Right. And with the work analytic workspace, again, there's a different pricing models.
Yeah,
So if you are getting a lot of data and you want to look into those things and choose the one that's most, efficient for your
yeah, yeah.
customer. Back to you. Yeah.
So here you can see it's a pay as you go, but if you
Mm-hmm.
have more ingestion ratios, then you can see you can
The
change it to the commitment
there's a
base as well.
discounted way. Yes,
In
if there's a
discounted way,
lot
yeah.
more, you can use discounted
Discounted,
rates
yeah.
because you have more data that you have to deal every month, and that's
Mm,
what is there for. Back to you.
yeah. That's okay.
All right.
That's all for this small demo, right? So let's
Mm-hmm.
continue and see.
So let me, stall the screen from you now back to the place where we left. So we just looked into a great demo that Kasun showed on Azure Log Analytics and Azure Monitoring Services. So we deep dive a little bit more than what we planned, but I hope it's going to be valuable insights for all our viewers. That said, now let's look at overall monitoring in Azure, what you have currently and what you can use. So this is the great diagram there in terms of certain services that you already saw and mentioned. So first of all, platform metrics. Those things are get gathered and they are readily available on Azure Monitoring for you. You can look into them. They do get aggregated there. And when we talk about that, with those data, what you can do, you can basically go and look and explore those metrics within the Azure Monitoring itself, and as well as you can set up metric alerts that, for example, if there is certain anomalies that you want to trace and monitor on, for example, if you want to know if CPU of the virtual machine is running 95% for more than 30 minutes. So if you want to get alert, you can definitely set it up. Or if there is certain services are down, availability is not there, you want to get service, you can set it up with metric and alerts that are there as part of the Azure monitoring solution. Next, we have this Prometheus metrics, right? So that's open source metrics that you can also use the managed service in Azure, as Kaston mentioned. It get aggregated into the Azure monitoring workspace, and then of course once you have it, you can utilize all of those metrics to look and create the managed Grafana dashboards, right? That you can see what's happening there, and as well as you can use the Prometheus specific alerts. So if your team members again are more in line and they have this Prometheus skills from open source world of the monitoring these things, they can definitely use that and it's recommended to have it. And then you have different workloads. So if you have containerized workloads, you can have AKS, and you want to gather your logs from there, and as well as any other resource logs, including the activity logs that are part of this Azure platform, right, that they gathered for each service. Then they all can be combined into one log analytic workspace. They can also go to different, but again, if you are talking about one holistic system, recommendation is to combine them for efficient troubleshooting. So once you have this log analytic workspace with the activities and logs and traces, then you can use those again log alerts that we talked about. It's part of this Azure Monitoring Service. Then you have these log analytics itself. That's the creating the dashboards, looking at those workbooks that Kasun mentioned, they are part of it. And then you have specific insights under the Azure Monitor for AKS. You have specific insights into containers that you can get more details about what's happening in your environment. Is there any issues? What are the failures? Overall, what's the health state of your services that you are running? Back to you, Kasun. Is there anything else you want to add?
No, I think you have given a good idea about it. So yeah. So the only thing I had to mention is Azure Monitor Workspace is different from Azure Monitor, right? So it is
Hmm.
a new type of services that is specifically for Prometheus at the moment, right?
Right.
So that is specifically for Prometheus.
Great. Thank you. So that's it. Let's look now into some of the common uh, so let's look into the monitoring those microservices on managed Azure Kubernetes Service. Let's dive into that because our demo is going to be about that. So, and we want to give you some initial introduction on that in terms of challenges and what type of solutions it brings. Back to you, Kusun.
Yeah, so the one of the challenges that we have for microservices application is so observing these microservices involve lot of moving parts. So that means there are a lot of components in one single application. So it may have hundreds or thousands of services that build one application side. So monitoring and observing these individual small components will be very tricky, right? So that is one challenge you have. You should, if something goes wrong, you should have a way to track down individual services and identify the uh, issue, right?
Hmm.
So, and need of unified observability across all services. So, whatever this observability solution should able to monitor all of these components in your application, right? It can be your pods, your containers, and other database services, or whatever the services integrated to that application should be able to monitor, right? So if there are any one single place is missing, then you are you are losing some insight
Right.
about the application. So yeah, that's one of the challenges, right? So in solutions, so as I mentioned, Prometheus managed service can use to collect metrics, right? Then from the case, then export them to Azure Log Analytics or Azure Monitor Workspace. Uh, then you can use those queries or like dashboards through Grafana to visualize those information. Then application inside SDK, so that will allow developers to instrument their application to get as much as possible insight from their application. So then they can visualize them on the application inside or any other tools that are supported to visualize those traces and insights, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, then Azure Monitor for Container is also a solution in AKS, which allow us to show you the health, performance, and the logs of the containers which are running in the your AKS cluster. So in our case, is microservices, right? So then you can get the logs and performance data as well.
Right. Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. So that said, it would be nice to look into some type of implementation of that. AKS with monitoring and instrumentation in place, and that's what's going to be our next demo. So in this
Yeah.
next demo, we are going to show you how to uh, enable that observability on using the Azure Managed Services, Prometheus and Grafana for AKS. And then we'll look use of those container insights. And then we'll how to view the logs and log analytic workspace to see this, to see trace and logs of the information that you get collected. So before diving into that, I want to share this GitHub repo where you can actually access them. You will also get the QCR code as part of this, at the end of this session. So here, as you see, once you navigate into our GitHub repo here, it's a cloud infrastructure journey. That's the one that we run together with Kasun. For Azure Spring Clean, we created this repo. And in this repo, you would see that this is what, deployment of the solution should look like based on the Azure Bicep code that we have in place. It has prerequisites that are listed here that you need to have installed in your system, and then how to deploy it. So before running into all that, I would also say that the code for Bicep and its configuration, they are all listed here, so you can use them from here. In addition to that, I'll just walk you through that very quickly. So in the Bicep code, of course, you get this general idea here about what to expect, what this code, this provisioning is going to do for you by first, fulfilling the parameters that are part of this here. I want to just mention that there is a specific value there. And of course, these are all optional values. You can change them. I would say definitely change them. But there's one that you also need to extract from your environment, which should be your Azure Entra ID user, even though we put here Azure Active Directory, but it's not Azure Active Directory anymore. Just FYI, it's a Microsoft Entra ID. And then in user object ID, this is the one that you need to get into your user, and each user has object ID. You need to retrieve that one. Then, it's going to be GUID-like value, correct? That's
Yeah.
that's how it looks like. And then once you have there, then yeah, you can go and spin this, which is going to create your AKS cluster as the first part of the code. Then you would get your agent pools for this managed cluster that are set up here. Then, of course, you need to have your log analytic workspace set up. That's happening here. And then, Grafana setup, Prometheus, everything is baked into this solution. So I'm not going to go through each of them, but you can always, by the way, if you never used this GitHub Copilot, it became free now, right? So everybody can use that freely.
Yeah.
You don't have to
Yeah.
pay for it. I remember you have to pay it for it a couple months ago, but now it's free. So if you are not using that, that's another call. Go guys and try it out. It's really a lifesaver there, especially when you are dealing with a code that you have no idea about. It's first time you are seeing, right? You can always go and use. There's a chat, Copilot chat, that's coming with that in GitHub. So definitely use that one. But for this code at this moment, we don't have it here on the browser. I'm going to switch to the Visual Studio Code just to show you one more thing that you may find valuable when you are looking at our code. So I'm back on Visual Studio Code here, where the same repo where we are now, AKS Managed Prometheus. And here, I would just mention that another good thing that you can use when you are dealing especially with Bicep or ARM templates is to visualize that code to see what components are going to be provisioned. So you have this Bicep visualizer here, which I find very valuable. So whoever created that, it still needs to go through some iteration to make sure that it gets all the GIFs or visualization of each component. But here, as you see, part of this visualization is going to create the AKS cluster, right? That's what you would be seeing on the demo that Kasun is, going to show on the Azure portal. Part of this visualization will create the work analytic workspace and data collection points, including Prometheus account and as well as data collection endpoint that's here. And the rest are all different rules and action groups that are part of this deployment, as you see here. Anything else you want to add to this, Kasum, before you want to switch to Azure portal?
No, I think that's good. And one thing is that you need to put SSH key as well. So as you
Mm-hmm.
mentioned, you have mentioned only the user ID, right?
Yes.
But when you're using the bicep, you have to put the SSH key as well from your own SSH key. So if I give a introduction, what is the user ID means? This is the user that is added to the
Mm-hmm.
Grafana to access the Grafana dashboard. If you
Right.
didn't put a user, then you don't have permission to access the Grafana
No.
dashboard. So this is a user you need to add for
Okay,
the
great.
authorizations. Yeah.
All right, I'm stopping the sharing here, giving back to you. So you want to share the Azure portal now to go to the actual demo?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah. So previously, Han show you the code and give a high level explain about it. So now I will show you the exact setup, right? So I have my own resource group. So in this resource group, you can see all the components that Han explained is available. For example, cluster, AKS cluster here. Then you have the Grafana, manage Grafana workspace, then log analytic workspace, Azure Monitor workspace, and Prometheus rule groups, which we'll discuss. These rule groups are used to create different alerts and recording rules to give information about your application, right? Then you have the data collection rules to send uh, metrics to Azure Monitor workspace, right? Then there's another data collection rule which used to send logs and other components to log analytic workspace as well, right? Then at the top you have the action group which will configure with email notification. So you will, when there's an alert trigger, this action group will notify to that specific uh, notification system, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So first we will go and see the cluster. So we have AKS cluster here. So in the AKS cluster, in the monitoring section, you can see my monitoring is enabled. Then you can see at the bottom, manage Prometheus and manage container insights, both are enabled, right? So that means this cluster will send Prometheus metrics to uh, my managed Prometheus, that means Azure Monitor workspace. So because we have enabled the container insight, so within the cluster you have a section called monitor. So if you go to this monitor section in the cluster, you will get a very good overview about your cluster state, right? So here you can see events that are triggered from Kubernetes, right? So these events will be helpful for you to identify if something goes wrong within the cluster. So for example, if I click these events, then it will use log analytic workspace, and you can see these different type of events triggered from different components within the cluster, right? So then here in the cluster summary, you can see the how many nodes that are running, right? Then how many pods are total running. Then if there are any failure pods or pending pods, then you can identify those components, right? Then the namespace CPU will show you the in Kubernetes we have namespace concept. So it's like a logical uh, area that you can use for deploying application. So you can see the each namespace, how much CPU using, how much of memory of these each namespace are using. Then you can see node CPU memory usages as well. Then the logs also very important. You can see the how much of logs are injecting from the cluster. Then it will very helpful to show you the top 5 logs type that are different components are injecting. So if you identify one of your application is uh, inject a lot of logs, then you can assume that there are some things going wrong, or you can see the warnings and network related metrics as well, and the platform related metrics as well from this. Oh, it is very helpful to get a very overall idea about the cluster. Then you can dive deep into each of these nodes as well. Then the controllers in the Kubernetes, like daemon sets, kind of controllers, or the deployments also you can dive and see. In individual container wise also you can view the memory metrics, memory and CPU usages like this, right? So that is the part of the container insight. So then we will look into the Prometheus workspace. So here Prometheus workspace is the place you are logging, connect to your cluster. So you can see the cluster is connected. Then here you can see uh, additional information like rule groups that are included in here. So these rule groups will run specific queries. We call PromQL queries. It's like a KQL queries to get the information uh, from the Prometheus, right? So you can create your own rule groups and include it into the Prometheus workspace to get information from Prometheus, right? Then from the Grafana, we have connected this Grafana with Azure Monitor Workspace so that Grafana can use Azure Monitor Workspace as a data source. So then to visualize the data, right? So when you provision the Grafana managed service, Azure provide you very informational dashboard inbuilt, right? So that means these dashboards are pre-provisioned with the Azure Managed Grafana. So you can go and view like the cluster state, right? So here you can see uh, how much of CPU using, how much of uh, different quotas are using in the clusters, then the memory usage between namespaces. Likewise, there are a lot of good information about here. So additionally, you can view as pod level, right? So if I go to one of the pod namespaces, you can see very good information about each of these components as well, right? So there are a lot of network related dashboards as well, then the node related dashboards. So these are very informational when you are doing troubleshooting and if something goes wrong in your cluster,
Right.
right?
And anything that you want to analyze, if there's something is, if there's any
Yeah,
production issue, or
yes.
it can be also staging issue. It
You
doesn't
see,
need
yeah,
always to be
yeah,
production. You can analyze to see and troubleshoot with the development team to see what's happening in the environment.
yeah. So yeah, so additionally, this allow us. There are some the preview feature is available to get the metrics from the managed components of the Kubernetes, which is the control plane, right? So this is the control plane metric. So I have enabled that preview feature. So therefore, you can get the control plane metrics as well to the Prometheus and Grafana. So you can view if something is going wrong with the managed components of the Kubernetes as well. So yeah, it's also very important, right? In the sense.
Yeah, which is very important, right? So it's not always the pods where you should see the issues, right?
Yeah,
Sometimes can be administrative admin portal, admin control plane that Azure showed, as custom showed that you can have access in Azure, and it's in preview, right? It's in preview. You need to enable. That
yeah.
thing was missing before, and if there was any issue in the control plane, you will just have no idea. You would have to go to
No
look at
idea you are doing.
health
Yeah,
services, right? Health services monitoring. That's
yeah.
part of the. And if the AKS servers are basically affected, if there's any issue in the environment where you're running them, that can give you idea that okay, maybe the issue is in the control plane, right?
Control
So you don't
plane.
have to
Yeah,
spend too much time on looking at the
yeah,
pods. So that's really helpful, I would say, because before we didn't have that. It was
yeah.
just not there.
Before. Yeah.
Back to
Yeah, so yeah, so that's a high level overview of this. But you can if you're when you're familiar with Prometheus and Grafana, you can build your own components, right? So then you can build your own dashboards as well. Or the good thing about is Grafana already has their own dashboard gallery, right? Grafana dashboard gallery. So you can go to this gallery, and then if you have a specific custom application, custom means if you have like Azure, sorry, if you are using HashiCorp Key Vault or
Mm-hmm.
any other application, then you can search for do they have a dashboard inbuilt created by the community. Then you can import this dashboard into the Grafana as well, as well. So it's really good, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Then
Yes,
the
it's definitely to use the one that's community already using, and there was
yeah
then creating your own one, right? Then starting
yeah
from
yeah.
scratch. Yeah, back to.
Then additionally, we will check the alerting section. So if you go to this my um, Prometheus rule groups, right? So there's a separate rule group I have created for alerting metrics, right? So alerting rules. So
Mm-hmm.
here you can see that I have alerting rules created configured, right? For example, if I want to notify some pods are continuously restarting and crashing, then I have created a alerting rule to notify those uh, rules, right? So this is like a PromQL, like a KQL. So then it will integrate it with my action groups, right? To send that uh, alerting to the action group, right? So then you will notify if something was wrong. For example, I have a demo now. So in here you can see in the alerts in Azure Monitor, you can see I have pods that are continuously restarting. So you can see the status here. So when you click
Nice.
the alert, you can get the history. Then you can see all the information, expression, and additional details related to which services is causing this alert and things, right?
Great. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So that is very good. Yeah. So that's a demo that I need to show. Then in Logantic Workspace, also you can use to query the logs as well. So for example, I will quickly show that one. So if you search for, if you create, if you type container inside container logs, right,
Mm-hmm.
table, then you can see the logs related to that containers, right? So
It will take some time to retrieve them, and
yeah,
you
so
want to see is it last hour or how much,
how much? Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. So you
you
can
want to
see
bring, how much
these
logs you
kind
want to
of,
bring.
yeah.
Right.
So
And you can
these kind of
aggregate,
logs.
and with QQL, we are not going to teach, or dive into QQL there. That's a big topic on itself,
Big
right? How
topic,
to
yeah,
manage it.
yeah. I'm not going
I would
to,
say that QQL is very powerful language. You can
yeah,
aggregate the logs to see, specifically, for example, if there's certain IP address that you want to see how many times there was a request to that IP address,
yeah.
you can aggregate and see that. And plus, you can see aggregation within given time bound. It's not
Time
just
box, yeah,
always, everything, because you may have ton of logs there. You want to aggregate and time bound that, for example, what happened in the last 24 hours, right? So how many requests does IP get? So all those things are doable here, but we are not going to dive into that.
yeah.
It's just
It's
not part of
the
our.
KQL can be very complex.
Yes.
That you can write like this type of
Right. There are
KQL.
complex
Very,
queries there. I saw very, very complex ones, which
yeah,
shows the power of the language, but it's
yeah,
not the scope of our demo. Thank
yeah,
you. Anything else, Kasun, you want to do that? Because I don't want this demo just go on and on.
yeah.
We want to
That's
keep
all.
the
Yeah,
viewers in our mind. Great. Thank
yeah,
you. I think that was a great demo. I'm going to steal the screen now from you and back to the demo so that you saw just now. Thank you, Kasun, for that demonstration. It was ton of goodness there, ton of good stuff. I hope you find it valuable. It's really hands-on deep dive into that. Okay, that's it. Now let's kind of look at best practice and conclude our session today. In terms of best practices, of course, for cloud native observability scenarios, you want to make sure that you have that distributed tracing, right? So you are capturing the requests, you are capturing the flow of the services, and you are able to capture those important pieces of tracing that you want to have in your application. And then, of course, you want to have this automated alerting and hopefully responses for those alerts, which is the second step after you create the alerts, where you need to have your metrics, key metrics in place in order to be able to create those automated alerts. And then again, it's the next step where you want to work on automated responses to that. But the first step is to basically alert on anomalies, alert on specific critical stuff that your customer or SRA team needs to be aware about. And then, of course, another part of the logging, another part of the big part of the observability is making sure that your log management is centralized. Without that, it's just not going to be feasible, to know what's happening in your system. And without that, you cannot get actually real-time log and alert information from your system. And you can centralize your log management by, for example, using for your workloads, you can use one Azure Log Analytic workspace where you can centralize all your logs, metrics, and traces, and then setting up alerting and all important managed services to be on top of what's happening on your environment. And then, of course, part of it is not just collecting logs, right? So once you collect the logs, you need to put them into use, and that's where dashboard and visualization come in place. So as was mentioned in the previous demo that Kasun showed, one of the good ways is to use the managed Grafana services that comes with built-in dashboards. But in addition to that, I would say that Azure also comes with built-in ways of visualizing certain workloads that you can look into workbooks. There are a number of them that you can enable right from the Azure. And those are great visualization insights that you want to have in place, because even though you get the logs and even though you gather everything, again, if it's not visualized, if somebody is not able to look into that whenever it's there are issue in the system, they're just going to be too much querying and understanding querying. But this monitoring, having these dashboards and monitoring will empower your help desk team to know what's going on in the environment so that they can, reach to the appropriate teams to tackle the issue, to tackle the, any outage or whatever can happen in your system as quick and as efficient as possible. So these are the main things here. Anything else you want to add, Kasun, before we conclude our session with some takeaways?
No, I think that's good. Yeah, so these are good recommendation, best practice we need to follow.
Yes. And in terms of key takeaways, right, from this summary, I hope you learned you get some much deeper understanding of observability, especially on cloud native, services. Observability is big part of it. And essentially, when we speak about observability, it's not just logging, it's much more than logging. And you need to make sure that your system is ready for that. You need to enable that capabilities. Sometimes you need to take into account the cost, what would be the cost of collecting those logs, what's the appropriate pricing model depending of your workloads. So this is part of this getting ready for observability and monitoring solutions in your system. Then next important thing is having this access to the tools that you can enable them in your on your applications that's running in your cloud infrastructure. Your applications can also run in on-prem, or they can also run on different cloud, but you can still aggregate all logs. If it is part of this holistic solution of your customer, try to aggregate them in one centralized logging. That's best practice there. If you want to have this good understanding, and I would say they call it single pane of glass, right? So one place where you can look and understand what's going on in your system. So to enable that, you need to have centralized log management and collection in place. And of course, implementing best practices that we just mentioned on the previous slide. This is very important learn on the to learn on the best practices that Microsoft and community members, especially open source community members, have provided in place. So that would add into about it will enhance definitely scalability of your solution, performance, and observability of cloud native services that you are running for your customers. Any other takeaways you want to add, Kasun, before we go to the resources and some learning points from our presentation today?
Well, I think yeah. So you need to you need to plan really good if you want to create a good observability. And at the first attempt, you will not get the all the details, but it is like a
Right.
continuous optimization, right? Continuous process you need to do to improve your observability. So it will take time sometimes. Uh,
Yes. And to add what Kasun is mentioning here is basically you need to have this DevOps mindset, right? When you are
yeah,
dealing especially with observability, it's going to take some time and understanding of your team to enable specific services and configure them in a way that it's most valuable and insightful for your application observability. And think about DevOps as iterative process, right? Where you try something, you need to experiment with certain things within your team to see which services are the best suit to provide this great observability to your workloads for your customers. And each case is different. There is no, uh, standard way that you implement and then it will cover everything. Unfortunately, you need to customize your observability based on application types and services that you are monitoring and providing support to your customers. So that said, it would be great to look at some references, right? Where to look after this and where you can learn more about observability for cloud native systems. Here, the demo repo that we just showed, and you saw the code there, and as well as Azure portal where the provisioning of those services and their functioning was there. So please check our cloud infrastructure journey repo and look into Azure Spring Clean 2025 repo that's there for you, specifically created for you for this session. So please give us your feedback. If you want to add something or you have a PR to that repo, we are welcome, everybody, right? So it's there for community, created by community. So make your PR if you want to add anything into our GitHub repo for today. And then, of course, learning, if you want to learn more about AKS monitoring capabilities, what's there, what's in preview, what's coming, and what are the best practices. It's there. It's a Microsoft Learn document, open for you 24 hour 7. I would call it like 24-hour every day, right? 24/7. So it's there. It should be available for you to dive into that. Um, that said, we come to the end of our session. It went a little bit over an hour here, but I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you again, organizers of Azure Spring Clean. We were really pumped up and honored to be again back this year on Azure Spring Clean with Kasun, our duo MVP, I would say. They call my partner in crime, Kasun and I again, we're
yeah.
here. I hope you enjoyed this session, and it will give you some ideas how to deal with your specific journey of setting up observability for your customer missions. But back to you, Kasun. Any final closing, announcements from you?
Um, yeah, no, nothing special. So, but I also need to thank everyone who are watching and the organizers. So, yeah, we will see you again in this year
So,
some session
so
or
if you
in
like,
the
yeah, yeah, I'm going to be, Kasun is a little bit. Uh, not taking that, but if you like this session, put a like in that YouTube channel wherever
yeah.
you are going to put their comment, whatever you want to see next and what you find useful, helpful. Maybe there was certain things that you were having in mind and you are dealing with some problem and this is going to be a solution for you, or at least a thought that will give you solution. Let us know. That's why the comments are there, and we are here to help you in achieving that success, hopefully, or in helping you to guide you at least where you need to look in order to be able to find a solution. Let us know. Again, thank you for watching this. I don't want to take it too long, it's but Thank you again, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I hope you can check other sessions on Azure Spring Clean for this year. It's awesome place, and we have great presenters there. Thank you, organizers. Thank you, Kasun,
Yep, yep.
and
Welcome.
for bringing this together this year again. And we hope to hear your feedback, guys. Take care. Have a great day.
Have a good day. Bye.